Let's move next to a Mike Pence interview and a Ron DeSantis interview. The question that I have for everybody who's listening today is, do you think Mike Pence doesn't answer questions because he doesn't have answers, or because he is determined it's not to his advantage to actually answer these questions for whatever reason there may be? Maybe that he still wants some way to try to appeal to Trump voters if the Trump voters decide they want an alternative. Now, why they would go to Pence in that case, I don't know. That's the question that I have for you as we go through some of these clips. Here is Mike Pence being interviewed over the weekend by CNN's Dana Bash. Mike Pence first asked, again, it's a question that many Republicans have been asked. If the Department of Justice has evidence that Trump committed a crime, should he be charged? It's a very simple question. It's a question about law and order. It's a fundamental question. If there's evidence of criminality, should law enforcement act on that? Here is what Mike Pence says.
Really appreciate it. I want to start by asking about...
Thank you, Dana. Good to be on.
Thank you. About your former boss. He is facing a potential third indictment over his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. You said you, quote, hope it doesn't come to that, and the American people should decide his future at the ballot box. But I just want to be clear. If the Justice Department has evidence that he committed a crime related to January 6th, you do not think he should be charged?
Well, look, I know I did my duty that day under the Constitution. And frankly, as we traveled across New Hampshire this week to 10 events in communities across the state, I was deeply moved at how many people expressed their appreciation to me for the stand that we took for the Constitution. And I've said...
Now, you might be saying, David, did you cut the video? Is this Mike Pence's answer to some other question, like, what have you been up to for the last week? No, this is his answer to the question, if there's evidence of crimes against Trump, should he be charged?
Many times, the president's words were reckless that day. I had no right to overturn the election. But while his words were reckless, based on what I know, I'm not yet convinced that they were criminal. I mean, I obviously wasn't there for every meeting.
Now, of course, Pence seems to be answering the question, if you were voting to convict or acquit today, what would you do? And Pence is saying, based on what I've seen publicly reported, I don't know that he committed a crime. It's not the question, of course. The question is, if the DOJ has evidence of crimes, should Trump be charged? If the answer is no, you're essentially saying that there should be a special justice system for Trump specifically.
I was busy trying to help reopen the government and the country after the COVID pandemic. I was spending a fair amount of time in Georgia, Dana, as you remember.
I'm not going to play. He doesn't answer the question any further than to say, I don't believe that Trump did commit crimes. Why not just answer the question? You could answer a question of this nature by saying, Dana, one of the most important principles for me is law, order, and due process, and that no one is above the law. However, I believe that in this particular case, whatever. You could say that, but he doesn't. He talks about people he spoke to in diners in New Hampshire or whatever the case may be. After Pence says that he's not super worried about Donald Trump's rhetoric, Dana Bash brings up, they wanted to hang you on January 6th. You remember that, right?
Talking about the potential for violence. Donald Trump said this week, talked about how his supporters might react if he is charged and faces potential jail time.
I think it's a very dangerous thing to even talk about, because we do have a tremendously passionate group of voters, much more passion than they had in 2020 and much more passion than they had in 2016.
Wow.
I think it would be very dangerous.
Does that kind of rhetoric worry you?
Well, it doesn't worry me because I have more confidence in the American people.
Really? The same American people who built a gallows and wanted to hang you? Oh, wow, you're very confident. Huh?
And in the people in our movement. Look, it was one of the things that infuriated me on January 6th with what I saw. People
I was really mad when they wanted to hang me.
Ransacking the Capitol and engaging in violence against law enforcement officers, Dan. I think that I would say not just the majority, but virtually everyone in our movement are the kind of Americans who love this country, are patriotic, or are law and order people who would never have done anything like that there or anywhere else. So I have more confidence in the American people than that. I hear my former running mate's frustration in his voice, but I'm sure the American people will respond in our movement in a way that will express, as they have every right to, under the First Amendment, to express.
This is Pence filibustering to avoid a follow-up, but Dana Bash does follow up.
There's concerns that they have about what they perceive to be unequal treatment of the law, but I'm not concerned about it beyond that.
That's pretty remarkable that you're not concerned about it, given the fact that they wanted to hang you on January 6th. I want to move on to the issues that you were talking about.
Well, Dana, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. I want to say to you,
wait a minute.
There's been an effort to take those that perpetrated violence on January 6th and use a broad brush to describe.
Yeah, Dana, to be fair, only some of those people wanted to hang me. Not everybody wanted to hang me. Okay. And then the topic of abortion comes up. And again, he just doesn't answer the question. Dana Bash asking, if a woman's ultrasound shows that there is a non-viable fetus, would you be okay with an exception there, or would the woman be forced to carry the non-viable pregnancy to term? And listen to what Mike Pence said. This is unbelievable.
Belongs.
You support banning abortion even in cases where pregnancy isn't viable. So the question is, if a doctor looks at a woman's ultrasound, sees her fetus is missing parts of its skull and a brain, and I bring that up because it's a real scenario that a woman testified to in Texas this week. You're saying that the woman should still have to carry that child to term even if there's no chance the baby would survive?
Well, let me be clear about this, because we got to be very clear on language.
Yeah.
Look, I'm pro-life.
Right.
But I've always recognized and accepted abortions in tragic circumstances, rape, incest, the life of the mother. And candidly, Dana, in cases like an ectopic pregnancy where the child simply cannot survive, I would assume that would be covered by the life of the mother.
Wrong, swing and a miss. Not talking here about an ectopic pregnancy, which can be very dangerous to the mother. Dana Bash brings up a different scenario. This is not an imaginary scenario. This is a very real scenario. You know, the Republicans love to say, oh, these are edge cases. They barely ever happen. They don't really happen at all. No. This is a completely real scenario that happens. Of course, it's not a majority situation, but in a country of 330 million people, it happens many, many, many times. It does not relate to the health of the mother. The mother is fine, but the fetus is not developing normally. It's missing critical pieces to survive. It's not going to lead to a successful developing child at any point. And he says, well, it's probably covered. No, it's not. It's not covered by life of the mother. And again, refusing to answer the question, just to answer the questions. And again, is it because he realizes that saying, yeah, the mother who is not at risk health-wise should be forced to carry that child to term? It doesn't make any sense. He knows that doesn't make any sense, so he won't say it. I don't know. It would be nice to see some questions answered. The better scenario is for no real questions to be asked. That's what we're going to look at next. We need to teach kids to think critically and independently, and we aren't doing a good enough job of it. I have a book right here that teaches kids critical thinking. I wrote this book, and it's available on Amazon at davidpakman.com/book. This is told through the story of a kid detective. The idea is critical thinking, thinking independently, is like solving a mystery. Getting clues, evaluating them, thinking through scenarios. The right knows that when kids think critically, they don't end up being Republicans when they're adults, and that's why they hate teaching kids critical thinking. This book alone won't solve the problem, but it will get kids interested. Get a copy, Kindle, paperback, at davidpakman.com/book.